Good evening, everyone. Or good morning, depending on what part of the world you're in. Welcome to our new live webinar series where we aim to bring more frequent, interesting and relevant conversations with experts in different fields relating to whole food, plant-based nutrition and lifestyle medicine. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. I'm meeting with you today from the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains, South Australia. We pay our respects to their elders past and present. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today, and also to traditional owners of the land in which you are joining us from, whichever part of the world you may live in. My name is Rebecca Stonor and I am the CEO of Doctors for Nutrition, and I'll be your host for today. Doctors for Nutrition is an Australasian health promotion charity working for a future where whole food plant-based nutrition is widely used in disease prevention, management, and even reversal. Our vision is to create a world free from preventable disease so that everyone can thrive and live to their full potential. The topic of today's webinar is 5 proven benefits of a plant-based diet for sports performance, and we're delighted to have a panel of athletes joining us today. Before we hear from our speakers, I've just got a quick announcement for you. Firstly, DFN have launched a new membership program you might have heard with a range of benefits for health professionals, students and anyone in the community interested in expanding their knowledge in nutrition. One of the perks of becoming a member is that it entitles you to watch our entire library of CPD approved Food Vitals webinars on demand at any time, free as a part of the membership. Watching webinars like this one will continue to be available free for all when it's live. However, if you're not a member, you are able to purchase CPD approved webinars individually to view at your leisure. Becoming a member, you'll also have access to the Nutrition and Healthcare Conference recordings and many other discounts on a range of DFN events and offerings. Don't forget the membership is open to everyone worldwide, medical professional, community members, students, concession card holders. There's a different pricing tier for all. And exclusively only to viewers of tonight's webinar, we have a 10% discount code for the next 48 hours. Head to our website and enter the code 10OFF to obtain your discount and join our membership program. The link to this and the code is in the chat box. So if you love what we do and like to support us, there are a few ways you can do this. You can buy Doctors for Nutrition merchandise on our online store. We have new women's and unisex t-shirts in a variety of sizes and colours, caps, bags, aprons and more. I'm wearing the unisex tee today with the logo on there, and there's a big logo on the back as well. So check it out and start wearing our merch to promote DFN and show your support. Now, also in partnership with the International Board of Lifestyle Medicine, Doctors for Nutrition is excited to offer the certification pathway for physicians and healthcare professionals in Australia and New Zealand and the Pacific Islands to become an IBLM diplomat. Extending beyond the adoption of whole food plant-based eating pattern, Doctors for Nutrition also acknowledges the importance of the remaining 5 pillars of lifestyle medicine. These pillars play a crucial role in the effective prevention and management of chronic disease. And the alignment between IBLM and Doctors for Nutrition reflects a shared vision of creating a world free from preventable disease. Certifying through DFN and IBLM gives you international recognition in having achieved competency in lifestyle medicine. An important thing to note today is you need to register soon to complete the core competencies and sit the exam later this year. To find out how you can become an internationally certified lifestyle medicine practitioner, head to our website and the link is in the chat box for that. Now, if you can stay until the end of the webinar for further announcements, we've got a few more things to tell you. So a few tips to get the most out of this webinar experience. Firstly, we welcome you to open the chat box via the Zoom toolbar and introduce yourself. Let us know your name, occupation and where you might live. But also make sure to send your messages to everyone so everyone can view it, not just us. For the best view, select Speaker View in the top right-hand corner of the Zoom window. And after our panel discussion, our speakers will be answering your questions live. So to submit a question at any time during the presentation, just click on the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen and type your question during the webinar. We'll aim to get through as many of these as possible, but we hope it'll be a nice interactive discussion at the end. So I'd love to start introducing today's panelists. We're really grateful to have Dr. Leila Dehghan on the panel, joining us all the way from the UK. Leila is a doctor turned plant-based nutritionist and personal trainer. Her personal experiences of overcoming health challenges through diet shifted her professional interest to focus on the power of nutrition. After transitioning to a whole food plant-based lifestyle herself, she earned a plant-based nutrition certificate at eCornell University and obtained a Masters of Science degree in clinical and public health nutrition from the University College of London. As an amateur martial artist, she takes a keen interest in sports nutrition and has previously contributed to a clinical handbook by authoring the chapter Plant-Based Nutrition for Athletes. Leila's passion for education led her to found the Plant Ed Academy, dedicated to creating courses and educational material that raise awareness about the benefits of plant-based diets for fostering a sustainable and healthier future. Ben Eitelberg is a founder of Kaitiaki Endurance Sports and a non-for-profit Athletes for Nature, a tribal movement of outdoor enthusiasts taking action to protect their playground. As an accredited endurance sports coach, he has been providing coaching and plant-based nutrition services for 14 years across multiple platforms, multiple endurance sports disciplines, showing there are no boundaries to success as a plant-powered athlete. Ben's an environmentalist, a former national AG triathlete, and a current trail ultra marathon, that's a lot of words there, and co-host of the Planet Pulse Pacific podcast, say that 10 times fast, disseminating all aspects of planetary health. Maeve Frawley is a passionate advocate for strength, wellness, and plant-based eating. Maeve has lifted weights for 22 years and is a fitness coach to over 1,000 clients. She has a Master's of Exercise and Nutrition Science and a Bachelor of Health and Fitness. She also has a professional diploma in executive coaching and mentoring and has 16 years lecturing experience in Munster Technological University in their Bachelor of Science Health and Fitness program. Maeve has represented Ireland internationally in Taekwondo for a decade and is currently competing in Strongwoman nationally in the UK and internationally. With years of experience in nutritional consultation and senior GAA teams, high performance and elite athletes, Maeve is well positioned to talk on the topic of the benefits of plant-based nutrition for sports performance. So on behalf of Doctors for Nutrition and our viewers, welcome to you all, and thank you so much for taking the time to discuss this important topic with us today. So Leila's first in line, would you like to start sharing your slides and unmute yourself, please?
Hi, thank you. Let me just start sharing first. All right, thank you.
Perfect.
So yes, it's so great to be here. Thank you. And, being joined by two amazing athletes, that adds an extra, edge to the webinar. I like actually to start always to tell a little bit about myself, so that you know that you can actually trust the information that I'm about to present. So, okay, sorry. Yes, that's it. So yes, as Rebecca said, my journey into nutrition actually started with my own health challenges. I used to suffer from chronic migraines, which is having headaches on more than 15 days a month, and 10 of them being actually migraine. And migraine was also the reason that I had to leave medicine. And then I joined the fitness industry, became a personal trainer. But I was actually lucky because I discovered a whole food plant-based diet. And by changing my diet from a kind of, vegan junk food to whole food, to a no-oil whole food plant-based diet, I healed my migraines. And, I have written quite a lot about my success story because nutrition gave me a second chance at life. And I was so amazed by the power of nutrition that I decided, to become a nutritionist, get a master's degree, and help others to achieve the same, health benefits that I managed to get. I do Kung Fu. There are a few pictures of me in my Kung Fu gear. So I'm really passionate about sports nutrition. And I have contributed a chapter on plant-based nutrition for athletes to a clinical handbook. And as part of a Planted Academy, I have actually developed the first comprehensive course on plant-based sports and exercise nutrition. And I'll tell you more about that later. You know, plant-based diets are regularly mentioned in the media, but whenever they are not being criticized, the focus is usually on climate change and sustainability. And in the vegan community, when plant-based diets are discussed, it is again in terms of general health benefits. But today, we are actually taking a different approach. We are going to discuss how plant-based diet specifically improve athletic performance. And this is a rapidly growing area of interest for several reasons. First, climate change is everyone's responsibility. And adopting a sustainable plant-based diet, plays a huge role in actually fighting it. Second, more and more elite athletes are adopting a plant-based diet to optimize their performance. In fact, during the most recent Olympics, if you followed it, we had quite a few, plant-based athletes, and some of them made headlines because they won medals. Finally, people are starting to realize that sports nutrition isn't just for nutritionists and dietitians who work with elite athletes. In fact, it can benefit anyone who is physically active. So hopefully by the end of this webinar, you will be able to explain the 5 evidence-based benefits of a plant-based diet for athletes and how each one of these benefits actually impacts athletic performance in practical terms. I believe understanding that, how these benefits affect your own training will actually make them more tangible, and hopefully it will encourage you to confidently adopt a plant-based diet. So the 5 benefits are here on one slide, but I'm going to just move on to the first one now, which is improved cardiovascular health. Now, I'm sure most of you know that plant-based diets are rich in antioxidants, fiber, vitamins, minerals, and healthy fats. So these nutrients work together to lower blood pressure, reduce LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and support a healthy body weight. And these factors improve vascular function, and it also reduces the risk of heart disease. Now, why is this important for athletes? Because even athletes aren't immune to heart disease. In fact, we have research that shows that endurance athletes can actually have a higher risk of coronary plaques and heart damage compared to sedentary individuals. In one of the studies, the increased risk was up to 44%. So a plant-based diet can actually help reduce this risk by managing blood pressure and cholesterol levels, and potentially even reversing plaque buildup. For endurance sports like running, cycling, and swimming, obviously efficient blood circulation is crucial. And this is where, leafy greens and also beets, like leafy green vegetables like spinach and kale, but also beets, they play a huge role here because these vegetables are high in nitrates. And nitrates are converted into nitric oxide in the body. And nitric oxide is actually a powerful vasodilator. So it relaxes and widens blood vessels. And this way, blood flow is improved and blood pressure is lowered. But even strength athletes can actually benefit from a diet rich in nitrates, because higher nitric oxide can boost muscular endurance and increase power output during high-intensity training sessions. And more nitric oxide means more oxygen and nutrients are delivered to muscles during exercise and recovery. While at the same time, metabolic byproducts like lactic acid are removed. So this will help endurance athletes to maintain a steady pace without, experiencing any fatigue. And strength athletes can lift better, and they can again sustain effort through those tough sets without muscle fatigue. And again, strength athletes who are focused on hypertrophy, vascular function. Better vascular function means that more nutrients are taken up into the muscle tissues. And that will not only improve muscle recovery and reduce soreness, but it also supports muscle growth. So you see both, endurance and strength athletes, independent on what their fitness goal is, can actually benefit from an improved cardiovascular health. The second benefit is improved muscle recovery. And I like that because this is something many athletes notice pretty quickly as soon as they switch to a plant-based diet. And this is largely because plant-based diets are packed with anti-inflammatory compounds, and they help reduce oxidative stress and inflammation. After intense workouts, the body produces free radicals, and that can cause muscle fatigue and a slow recovery. But because of the antioxidants in plant-based diets, these free radicals get neutralized. And again, we have studies actually showing that a plant-based diet can reduce the inflammation markers. One of the studies which is worth mentioning is a systematic review and meta-analysis from 2020. And it found that plant-based athletes experience faster reduction in inflammation markers like C-reactive protein. Now, reduced inflammation means faster recovery because, as you may know, that exercise is actually an inflammatory event. So intense workouts cause microtears in muscle fibers, and that triggers an inflammation response in the body. And this inflammation is actually necessary. It is part of the healing process. It is what allows our body to adapt and improve. It is a bit like a fire with a purpose, but excessive inflammation is like a fire out of control. It can cause damage and slow recovery. So plant-based foods are anti-inflammatory. They act like water to regulate this inflammation, while animal-based products are pro-inflammatory and they can fuel the fire. Athletes are familiar with DOMS. It is delayed onset muscle soreness. And again, the antioxidants in plant-based diet can actually help reduce DOMS. Less soreness means faster recovery. So athletes can train harder and more often. And less muscle fatigue also reduces the risk of overtraining and overuse injuries. So over time, by training more often and having less injuries, that can actually improve performance. Now, some foods that have shown, to have benefits are berries, turmeric, ginger, sweet potatoes, leafy greens, beets, tart cherries, but also nuts and seeds like flax seeds and walnuts. They are, great sources of omega-3 fatty acids, and they can support their anti-inflammatory processes in the body. The next benefit is increased energy and endurance. A plant-based diet, or maybe I should actually say healthy plant-based diet, because you can follow a plant-based diet which is full of junk food. So a healthy plant-based diet or a whole food plant-based diet is naturally rich in complex carbohydrates and low in fat. And that provides a steady supply of energy throughout the day. So, when we eat processed foods or simple sugars, we get these quick energy spikes followed by crashes. But complex carbohydrates like whole grains, legumes, and vegetables, they give us a slow, consistent release of energy. And when it comes to athletes, especially those in endurance athletes, endurance sports like triathlons, marathons, or even those athletes who do long cycling races, they need this steady energy to maintain performance without experiencing the bonk, without, another name for bonk is hitting the wall, halfway through. Again, there are plenty of studies showing that consuming complex carbohydrates actually helps athletes maintain their glycogen levels, and that provides energy to long periods of exercise and prevents fatigue. But again, it's not just endurance athletes who benefit from a plant-based diet. When it comes to strength training, strength athletes also need stamina to maintain power throughout, long training sessions. So complex carbohydrates, for example, legumes, they not only provide long-lasting energy, but they also provide, protein for muscle repair and recovery. So other good sources are whole grains like quinoa, oats, brown rice, sweet potatoes. They are all great sources of complex carbohydrates. And they help athletes, as I mentioned earlier, to avoid energy dips or, the bonk. And if you need a quick energy boost, you should consume a banana. And that can be during or, before a workout. And as you can see, even non-vegan athletes actually resort to bananas because they provide natural sugars and they are high in potassium, which can help regulate, muscle function and prevent cramps. Next up is better body composition. Again, a healthy plant-based diet is higher in fiber and lower in fat, especially lower in saturated fat. And for the general population, this makes it easier to lose or maintain weight. For athletes, it translates into lower body fat and better muscle retention. And research supports this. There was a recent systematic review, it was actually from last year, and that found that athletes following plant-based diets improved body composition. And then there was another review from 2021 that also found that vegan and vegetarian diets were actually associated with lower body fat and better lean body mass compared to omnivorous diets. And a leaner physique with less fat and more muscle means a better strength to weight ratio. And athletes know how important strength to weight ratio is because that actually directly impacts speed, endurance, and efficiency. So for athletes like runners, cyclists, and gymnasts, excess body fat can actually hinder speed and agility. A leaner body means faster movements. For example, if you're cycling uphill or if you're running and you want to, sprint to the finish line. So the less body fat you have and more muscle, that is going to help you to kind of move faster and experience less fatigue. And this is also crucial for strength athletes because a leaner body composition allows weightlifters and powerlifters to lift heavier and generate more power. I don't know, you may know him. This is the vegan weightlifter Kendrick Harris. He took part in 3 Olympics, but not in this year's. And I should also mention that even those who do CrossFit, so that kind of strength training also benefits from a better strength to weight ratio, so from a lower, leaner body composition. So great sources are quinoa. Quinoa is also a complete protein. Leafy greens, they are low in fat, low in calories. So, but they offer a lot of nutrients. So they are nutrient dense. So by actually eating these foods, you get all the vitamins and minerals that you need for muscle recovery. But at the same time, they make sure that you're not actually adding body fat. So that this kind of diet actually helps athletes to maximize their power without sacrificing strength. So again, foods that are really beneficial, it's like kind of legumes, tofu, tempeh, they are great sources of protein and they are rich in fiber but low in fat. So, these foods, if you think about it, because they are rich in fiber, they actually help athletes remain fuller for longer. But at the same time, because of the nutrients that they offer, they support muscle repair and growth. Last benefit, decreased risk of injury. I don't really want to spend too much time on this because everything that, we have discussed so far, that I have mentioned so far, will show you that a plant-based diet, by boosting heart health, increasing endurance, reducing muscle soreness, and improving recovery times, actually helps lower the risk of overuse injuries. And when we talk about overuse injuries, that could be anything like joint pain or tendonitis. And because a plant-based diet is rich in essential micronutrients and anti-inflammatory compounds, So they help reduce inflammation, but at the same time, they protect your joint and tissues. And they also support strong bones and lowers the risk of fractures. And when you think about it, this means that athletes can actually avoid setbacks from stress fractures, joint pain, or tendon injuries. So fewer injuries means that athletes can train and compete without interruptions. And obviously that is important for immediate success, when they are competing, taking part in a competition, but also for a longer athletic career. So, they can actually remain in their sport for longer. So injury prevention is really important. And a study published in 2020 found that athletes who follow a plant-based diet, they experience fewer sports-related injury, but they also had a lower risk, for chronic conditions like diabetes and hypertension. And I'm sure, many of you who have been attending webinars like this are familiar with the role of plant-based diet in, improving general health. And what I like about a whole food plant-based diet is that it is always the same foods that, help you, get these benefits. So green leafy vegetables, nuts and seeds, walnuts, chia seeds, flax seeds, berries. So just by incorporating the same foods, into your diet, you can enjoy all the benefits that I have been discussing here. Now, I usually like to include some recipes to show how easy it is to eat a plant-based diet as an athlete. But because of time constraints, so I'm just going to add one recipe. It is, what I like about this is it can be, changed, like kind of made as a smoothie drink or a smoothie bowl, depending on what you like. And it also shows you that, there are some ingredients that you can use in your smoothie, which some people don't think about, like tofu and lentils, and that adds some extra protein. So, you can achieve high protein intake without protein powder. And again, this can be used as a pre-workout snack or meal, or as a post-workout snack or meal, because as I said, it offers actually around 500 calories and a very good amount of protein, 30 gram. So, I don't need to have 30 gram in every meal. So, for that is actually for people who weigh more than me, definitely. So I think this is a very simple recipe, and it shows you how easy it is to get all the other nutrients as well, like iron and calcium. And these are the nutrients that we usually refer to as nutrients of concern. So yeah, I wanted just to add that to show you how easy it is. Now, before I hand over to our athletes to share the experience, I want to take a moment to tell you about our plant-based sports and exercise nutrition course, as I mentioned earlier. I had the idea for this course, back in December 2019, but obviously it took a few years to bring it to life. But we finally completed it and launched it last year. The course is completely online. It consists of 7 modules, and it is accredited for 15 hours of CPD by British Society of Lifestyle Medicine. And I believe what makes this course unique is that it covers not only like kind of, advanced plant-based sports nutrition, but also includes foundational nutrition knowledge. So you don't really need to have a strong background in nutrition. You can still take the course. And I have personally edited all the content to make sure that it is accurate and evidence-based. And as a thank you for you, attending this webinar today, I'm offering a special deal. You get actually 20% of course if you fill out this feedback form. So here's the QR code. There is a list of questions which would help me to improve the content and create better content in future. But also keep in mind that I have already received a lot of content since last year. So we are going to make some changes to the course. And as of January, the prices are going to go up. So the next course is in November. So by filling out this form, you could get 20% of the course. And here are the references. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing now. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Leila. That's a very generous offer of 20% off. So that's great. We've heard definitely some of the proven benefits of plant-based nutrition for sports performance. Just letting everybody know that the slides will be emailed out in the next few days. There's been a couple of questions about references, so that'll be in the email following up from this webinar. Now, Maeve's next in line. It'd be great to hear from an athlete with lived experience. So Maeve, would you like to share your slides? Yep, perfect.
Is that okay? You can see them?
Yep, that's fine.
Great. Okay. Good morning from Ireland. So where I am, it's 9:30 in the morning. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background. Thanks for joining us, by the way. It's great to, share information and share experience as well from athletes. So just a little bit of background of who I am. I'm a mother. First and foremost, is the most important responsibility in my life. Everything I've done career-wise has been based in wellness and health. There's been kind of two pillars to my career for decades now. So I lecture in a university, like Rebecca was saying on the introduction. It's all around health and fitness. So we'd have a lot of people where we're the trainers to train them up to be strength and conditioning coaches, nutrition coaches, PTs. So I'm doing that a very long time. And then on the side of that, I've owned 3 gyms at one point. Had big staffs there, was a weight coach myself, and I still am. I sold my company a number of years ago, so I'm not in the kind of business side of it anymore, but I do help business people and I mentor them. And mostly it's around trying to find work-life balance. Is something I've kind of really taken pride in myself over the years of trying to find that balance myself as a career person and a mom, and also having time for myself. So, and on top of all of that, I'm an athlete. I've always been an athlete. I've always played sports. I've gone through a lot of different sports in my life. When I was a child, it was always kind of football and team sports. Got into martial arts and boxing. Was on the Irish team for Taekwondo for 7 or 8 years, I think. And after that, in my early 20s, I really kind of got into the gym and weight training. And I started to see the benefits of what it was to get strong. I wasn't naturally a strong build, so I had to work quite hard to get my body strong. Just on the athlete side of it, so what I do now is Strong Woman. So I don't know if you're familiar, it's a very, very popular sport on this side of the world, in Ireland and in the UK and in Europe and in America as well, but it's very popular this side of the world. I'm doing Strong Woman now for around 4 years, coming on 4 years. And just something that Dr. Leila was talking about a lot is recovery and inflammation, right? So that really hit home with me, because anyone that wants to get into strongman or strong woman as a sport and they want me to be their coach now, the one thing I say to them is they have to give recovery as much attention as their training. That's how tough it is on the body. And obviously with recovery, people talk to me and they're saying, oh, are massage guns good? Should I do this? Should I take this supplement? Again, they're kind of missing the main point. They're just like cherries on top. And what I always tell them is the most important thing is your diet, like your nutrition and your rest. And everything else is just like I was saying, a cherry on top. And the last little thing of background about me before I go in more to my slides, I'm a vegan now for 8 years. So I wish it was for longer, but it's not. This is the way it is. I think like a lot of vegans, I was like, why didn't I do this 10, 20 years ago? But here we are. So that's a little bit of a background on myself. So the next slide I'm going to show you, sorry, this won't pop across. So like I was saying, that's me in a nutshell there. That's my son on the left, Irla. So I started to kind of qualify for pretty big competitions when I was a year or so into Strong Woman. So, having him there to experience with me, it's just very, very special. The gyms I was talking about, they're called the Arena. So I had, like I said, 3 facilities, a lot of responsibility, a lot on my shoulders for a very long time. And mostly what I'm doing now is, like I was saying, what you see on the right there. So it's a lot of business mentorship and helping other people. I just wanted to explain as well a little bit. I think it's very interesting when you speak to someone who's vegan. I always ask them anyway, what was their view on veganism initially, and then how did they get into veganism themselves. And funnily enough, when I was 20 years ago, when I was living with friends, you know, when I was in college, one of my friends that I was living with was a vegan. And I'm just going to be 100% transparent and honest. I always wanted to be athletic and strong and fast. And she was just of the body type. She was very, very slim, wasn't very athletic, wasn't into sport or whatever. And, you know, I let this influence me into that kind of misconception that's still there, that if you get, you know, go vegan, you will get very slim and you won't, you know, you don't think of really strong people around veganism. So unfortunately, I was one of those people that thought I was interested in being vegan in a lot of ways, but I was afraid it would make me weaker. Silly enough, you know, this is 20 years ago. I was afraid I'd get weaker and I wouldn't be as good as an athlete. Fast forward all these years, like I said, I was always interested in it. The animal side of it for me, I was brainwashed. I'm Irish, we eat so much beef and stuff like that. I couldn't get my head around that I could survive without meat, but I was always interested in my own way in veganism. I did feel bad eating animals. That always played on the back of my mind. I felt physically unwell preparing meat. And also, I just feel like the whole thing as well with veganism, like I was saying, you know, getting skinny, losing my power, anything like that, it did always play in my mind. But one of the main things that changed for me is I did a master's in exercise and nutrition science. And we did a module on epidemiology and all that kind of side of things. And nearly every disease that was covered and the recommendations in recovering from that disease, etc., was to eat more fruits and vegetables, eat a more plant-based diet, stay away from animal products, reduce animal products. And I'm like going, why do we have to wait to get really sick to do that? So that really started to shift my way of thinking. And then I guess over the years as well, I met some strength athletes that actually were vegetarian or vegan. So I became more and more interested. And then, yeah, it was around 8 years ago. Actually, sorry, even before that, in my late 20s, I got really, really bad acne. I suffered from it in my teens as well, but it got out of control in my late 20s. And I went to the doctor and it was no help. You know, I didn't know what else to do. And thank God, then I got into attending a homeopath. And he just said in a very non-extremist way, he did some tests on me and said, you know, your dairy in your system's at a ridiculously high level. So you just need to cut it out for a while and let's see how your skin is. And you can reintroduce it if you want. So I cut it out for a while and my skin improved like drastically, very quickly. And I remember repeating, you know, going back to an appointment with the homeopath, and he said, you know, you can reintroduce little bits of dairy now if you want. And I was like, why would I do that? I'm after literally fixing my whole complexion. So I kind of became vegan in stages. I stopped using dairy a long time ago, and then I continued to eat meat and eggs for years. And then I think it was when I was pregnant with my son, it was the absolute, just what brought me over the edge with meat. And I just felt so unwell preparing it. And I was going, Maeve, your body's giving you a message here, you know, that kind of way. So I just stopped eating meat and I've never gone back to it since. So it's around 8 years and I've never felt better. Years ago as well, I did bodybuilding. I've done a lot of sports. And I'm using these slides to kind of describe, that's me on the left before I became vegan, just around 10 years ago. And that's me on the right. Now, for a lot of people, they might go, oh, that's bodybuilding picture and she looks great or whatever. I can give you a background on how my health was in the picture on the left. Everything for me, obviously with that sport, the focus was on the aesthetic and how you look. Nothing else really matters after that. I struggled to gain muscle. It's amazing what a tan and oil can do to your body. I struggled to gain muscle. I was eating at that point, I was eating meat and eggs for breakfast, not a mind for other meals. when I think back now, it's like I was a different person. I was completely immunosuppressed. Anything going around, I was picking it up. Chest infections, tonsillitis, next thing. And then, of course, like a lot of kind of, unfortunately, I fell into the kind of sheep mentality. I'm sick, I go to the doctor, I get an antibiotic. And I was in this cycle. There's always something wrong with me. I actually have arthritis. I had arthritis and I have it very badly in my hands and my wrists. Used to get flare-ups all the time from that. The skin issues, I used to get injured quite easily, to be honest. I could just make one strange movement in the gym and I feel like I'd pull my quad or I've pulled my groin. So that's kind of where I was at. I'm not saying I wasn't on death's door, but that's the type of athlete I was, and those were the kind of health issues I was going through. And back then I just saw it as normal and it's okay, and people get sick and people get chest infections and people have arthritis. And anyway, fast forward to now, and being, you know, since I made the decision to become fully vegan. So on the right, it's funny that when I was doing bodybuilding, I was trying to build the muscle mass that I have there on the right, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't get size on my upper body and my shoulders. So ironically, I left the sport, became vegan, ended up getting more muscle mass than I've ever got in my life. I choose just personally to never go back to that sport. And I realized how physically strong I was, and I stayed in the strength sports as opposed to bodybuilding. You don't have to be strong, it's how you look. So since I became vegan, I feel like I've the focus isn't on aesthetic anymore. My focus is on my health first and my performance. And the aesthetic seems to just come. And again, Dr. Leila explained it very well about the body composition side of it. You're eating a lot of high fiber foods, foods that are, especially if you're doing veganism, you know, healthily. I eat so much whole foods that without trying that hard in the aesthetic, it just kind of came with it. Thankfully, you know, I don't have high fat stores in my body. It's mostly muscle. So like I said, I built that muscle. The biggest thing for me with my health with veganism is I just feel like it's a bit of a sweeping statement, but I'm going to say it anyway. I just feel like I don't get sick anymore. And if I do once a year or something like that, and I feel a scratchy throat or whatever, I might just up the amounts of certain foods or anti-inflammatory foods. I might take some drinks and with ginger in it or whatever. And I feel like it just subsides. It just goes away. My body can deal with it. I haven't taken an antibiotic in 8 years. And I just have this overall feeling of wellness. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say, I get up at 6 in the morning, I do this, I do that. No, it's just my common denominator is I just always feel well and on a level. Maybe that's down to level blood sugars, whatever it is, regulating everything and kind of helping in homeostasis. But I just feel it affects my mood. I feel like it's changed me even mood-wise. I just feel very well and calm and on a level. I'm not fighting sickness. The arthritis thing, I keep forgetting I used to have arthritis. I don't get flare-ups around my knuckles and wrists anymore. That's huge. It's huge for me. So the next slide is kind of to really speak about me as an athlete. I just feel like I've reached my potential. I'm 43 years old. I feel like I got to my 40s and I reached my potential in my sport, and that's huge for me. I feel stronger, fitter, and more, you know, fierce than I ever had as an athlete in my 40s. And I think that's a nice message for people to be able to take from it. I did my first strong woman competition at the same week I turned 40. I did very well. I kind of exploded into the scene in Ireland, and I got invites to very, very big competitions after that. Just a week and a half ago, I competed at the World Championships, the Natural Federation, and I just wanted to be able to place in the top 10 in the world. I wanted to be ranked 10 in the world lightweight strong woman, and I did. Thankfully, I got 9th. So I'm really, really proud of myself to be ranking top 10 in the world. I just feel like for me as an athlete, what other people say to me that are thinking, that may be flexitarian, thinking of going more plant-based, etc. I don't really push too hard on people. but I just feel like a lot of people say to me that I'm a good influence as regards for someone that's considering going vegan. So I do get that a lot. That they might be thinking I might get weak, I might get skinny, I might get this, I might get that, and they see that I've gotten stronger and better as an athlete than I've ever been in my life. And I do put it down to veganism. I do put it down to veganism. So I feel like I can influence people very positively in that way. I'm nearly there now, so just a couple of minutes left. So the benefits overall, because I know this is about the benefits of plant-based diet for athletes. If I was to put it in little bullet points, especially after hearing Dr. Leila, so the muscle mass speaks for itself. I'm giving my experience, you know, but I eat whole food vegan. Do I have treats? Of course I do. Of course I do. But I don't eat mock foods all the time or mock meats. I sometimes do. I don't rely on protein powders, protein bars, anything that just has all these other chemicals and ingredients in it I don't need. I feel like my recovery is massive, and that's been covered already because I guess my inflammation is so low. I can recover. So the training we do is really hard. So if you know what strongman is or strongwoman is, you know those massive Atlas stones you have to lift. You're doing heavy deadlifts. One of the events at the World Championships, we pick up beer kegs, really heavy ones, 4 in a row, dump them onto something, run back for the next one. It's very depleting on the body. But I just feel like I can recover from these hard training sessions and go again the next day or whatever it may be. I just feel like my mental focus is better. When you train in weightlifting and it's very heavy, you have to be switched on. You can't be daydreaming, it's quite dangerous. So I just feel like my focus is so much better. And like I was saying, just that overall wellness and not dealing with sickness all the time. So like I was saying already, I'm 43 years old, 43 years young. And like a lot of vegan converts, I think I wish I'd done it years ago, but what's important is what we do now. That's what's important, okay? And, you know, I feel like I'm happier, healthier, younger, more focused, and kind of more confident than I've ever been. This word always comes up for me as wellness, and I always see that as a more holistic word. I feel well in my body and my immune system and my digestive system, etc. But I feel wellness more as well in my mindset. And maybe for me, I just connected with why over the years. I actually just feel better in myself that I'm not consuming any products that had anything to do with another sentient being's suffering. So I think even in my mind, I just feel that I'm doing my little part as regards that side of things. My last slide, I think if I talk about veganism as an athlete, etc., as a coach and how I can influence people, but I think the most important thing and the most proud I am is that I have given this gift to my son. So he's vegan all his life because I was vegan when I was pregnant and afterwards. And again, like his mammy, he's rarely sick. And and you know, with kids, there's like, he's 28 kids in his room and it's just like a cesspit of tonsillitis and this and everything and tummy bugs. He rarely gets sick like me. And if he does, he's over it very quickly. He loves his food, as you can see in the picture. He loves learning about food. He loves being around me when I'm speaking or anything like that. So he's, yeah, and again, like his mom, I feel like he's very calm and he's very level boy, you know, in his mood. He's not up and down. And as you can see on the right, his little broken arm. He loves animals. And already at his young age, he's 6. He loves to tell people he's vegan and he loves to tell people not to eat animals. So I think he's ahead of the game. That's all I was going to say. So thank you for listening, guys.
Thank you so much, Maeve. What a fantastic story. And your son must think you're so cool being a strong woman. He must go and tell everyone what you do, and what an amazing example you set for him. It's incredible. And we'll get into the Q&A at the end, but I'm just wondering like where you would be now if you hadn't changed your diet, like health-wise. So incredible. Thank you for that. Now, Ben, let's get on to your presentation if you're ready to share your slides.
Sure. All right, checking you seeing my screen.
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Fantastic. Toi tu tamara tane, toi tu tamara tangaroa, toi tu te tangata, tēnei ka mihi ke te mana whenua o tēnei rohe, toi tu nā tu tohu whenua o tēnei takiwa. Tēnā koutou katoa, good evening and good morning to all of our attendees. It's a real privilege to be amongst all of you this evening or this morning. So firstly, I'm the co-founder of the Lentil Intervention and Australasian Advocacy Platform, disseminating all aspects of planetary health. At the core of this New Zealand registered charity lies a multifaceted approach. The Planet Pulse specific podcast, disseminating knowledge and sparking dialogue, available on all popular podcasting platforms. Established 12 years ago, Sports Gear Revive collects and redistributes unwanted sports clothing and equipment to schools and groups within low socioeconomic communities. And Athletes for Nature, a community of outdoor enthusiasts dedicated to safeguarding the very environment that fuels our passion. Whoops, went ahead too quickly there. Joining the movement is a subscription to our set of action steps that enable athletes to achieve their sporting goals whilst reducing their footprint on our planet, their carbon footprint, that is. Our very first action step is eating for our planet. 13 years ago, I founded Kaitiaki Endurance Sports, which you already know. And now, whilst this webinar is primarily focused on nutrition, it would be remiss of me not to talk about the environment. As athletes that play in the outdoors, we need to acknowledge an important link. The Planetary Boundaries Framework represents 9 key variables with boundaries that affect Earth's life support system. 6 of those 9 boundaries have been identified as transgressed, suggesting that the Earth is now well outside of the safe operating space for humanity, therefore increasing the risk of crossing tipping points in the Earth system. Our global food system is the single largest greenhouse gas emitting sector in the world and by far the largest cause of biodiversity loss, terrestrial ecosystem destruction, freshwater consumption, and waterway pollution. The food you choose to put on your plate has a bigger impact than just your sporting performance. It has a direct correlation with your playground, our planet. Rebecca has already done a wonderful job introducing me, so I will just say this. Whilst I like to think I am at times, I am not a full-time professional athlete. I always like to make a point that I hold a full-time corporate job alongside spending a significant amount of time delivering my other entities and attempting to complete many hours of training. Just like many of you, I am time poor, have bad patches of eating, and at times also struggle to fit in my minimum hours of sleep. And just like Maeve, I like my treats. My intention is to provide you with a perspective that is representative of most of us here in the webinar. I'm fortunate that I've been brought up in a very active and relatively healthy environment. Both my parents loved the outdoors, and as a child, I was dragged on many long day hikes in the Drakensberg Mountains in South Africa. Our diet was predominantly a Mediterranean diet, lots of legumes, little meat, but plenty dairy. I've always loved playing team sport, but in my late teens, I found an obsession with endurance events, and in particular, triathlon. I skipped my own school ball as it was the same weekend as the National Ultra Duathlon Champs, perhaps a little too far for a seriously undertrained teenager, and found myself experiencing my first bout of severe cramping on the second run. Over the next 2 decades, I've had the privilege of first representing South Africa, but then New Zealand on multiple occasions at age group level in triathlon, road and off-road, and also widened my racing to other formats such as multi-day mountain bike stage racing and swim run. In my mid-20s, I became a pescatarian, as back then I was already looking for nutritional gains, and ironically, that was influenced by the diet by blood type, which of course, as we know, there's no supporting scientific evidence. One thing that was constant though through all this, I had what I only later discovered was a limitation, inflammation. Swimming and biking has always been my strength and could easily push the distance, but running anything over a half marathon, and I felt it on the stairs for days to come. This inflammation even impacted my wrists in long distance mountain biking and canoeing, limiting my ability to either change gears or brake or hold the paddle. It was limiting my ability to push further. I did not intend on going vegan. It was the culmination of a 6 to 8 month journey of exploring the food I was eating. In 2017, I was undertaking a year-long program to acquire Triathlon New Zealand's highest coaching accreditation, and I chose to focus on recovery principles. Nutrition turned out to be the most important, along with other lifestyle metrics. I read the first of many books on the subject matter, The China Study. I attended a lecture by Dr. Michael Clapper, an internationally recognized speaker on diet and health. And after 6 months of transitioning, it was at my next international event at the Xterra World Champs in Maui, where I locked in my plant-based way of eating, with easy access to tropical fruit and experiencing my very first taste of tempeh in a newly opened cafe filled with local surfers. I was part of the cool crowd. I then spent the summer in Australia and attended a 3-day vegan cooking course in Malabimbi, New South Wales, which provided me with the knowledge, skills, and confidence to cook plant-based. And then I read Eat and Run by Scott Jurek, a formidable ultra-marathon runner, winning this Western States 100-mile run on 7 consecutive occasions, amongst many other Palmares. And he writes about how going plant-based was the decisive factor. I had to try. In May 2018, my longest run was 11 Ks. I never fully committed to running my first ultra until August, as I was anxious about how the body would respond. But each weekend, that long run grew until I was effectively running a marathon each weekend. I could actually walk fine the same day of these long runs. The day after the long run, I would head out for another, albeit shorter, run. I could run on multiple days. I was convinced this diet was this decisive factor for me. I ran 100 kilometers fueled by homemade wraps filled with banana, spinach, and blueberry powder, as well as the more typical Cliff bars and gels. And I tried to drink an awful concoction of beetroot, ginger, and cacao powder. I was following the science. After coaching an athlete of mine a few years prior to her first 100 kilometer, I said I'd never do this. I did. So then I said 100 miles is for nutters, and I'd never doing that. 2 years later, I had my rubber arm twisted by that very same athlete, and I ran 100 miles. I was fueled by mashed potatoes, homemade oaties, medjool dates, and Cliff bars, and even had a local vegan cafe make me wraps and shortbread for me to pick up at some of the aid stations. I was hooked and became a big advocate for plant-powered athletes. Now I could push myself further. Generally, I recommend to my athletes about 4 to 8 weeks to recover from a 100-kilometer ultra, depending on varying factors. I can comfortably do it in 4 weeks from a tough event, currently running 4 to 5 ultras in 1 calendar year. The Ultra Trail de Mont Blanc, UTMB, is considered one of the most prestigious trail ultra marathons, and an event I've followed with admiration for many years, yet never considered myself capable of completing. It was never on my bucket list. I completed this event last year. But this, along with many other tough events, continue to provide me with many learnings, and I dare say I've yet to master my nutrition plan. Despite meticulous planning and good intentions, there is always a point in a race where it goes wrong. There's always a new reason. There are so many variables to contend with. Getting it right takes a lot of practice and trial and error. But in an ultra, you must accept that in most cases, you will hit the wall. It's how you recover from it. Simply put, you will need to eat or consume more calories than you're going to get. This is true for general day-to-day and on race day. Replenish your glycogen stores after training and deliver rapid energy to your working muscles. Carbohydrates is what does the job best. A lot depends on how fast you're running, your own physicality and conditioning, and how long you're spending on your feet. Generally, we aim for 60 to 90 grams per hour, generally via liquid and solid form. Pro cycling is pushing the boundary now with up to 120 grams per hour and are testing their bigger results to this. The wonderful thing about your body is it lets you know. The trick, though, is you figuring it out. When you're in tune with your body, functioning at a heightened sense of awareness, you can adapt easier. Be aware of other symptoms that can suppress your appetite, such as heat and altitude, and worse, the combination of both. On the flip side, there's an equally important requirement to consume sufficient calories in cold conditions. Drink carbohydrate mixes, drink just electrolytes, drink plain water. Drink to thirst, but adapt your needs. In general, gels provide the easiest and quickest source of energy and sugar in super compact packaging, and with relatively minor impact on the stomach. However, real food is more pleasurable and can provide comfort, especially deep into the night. This is a great option when passing through aid stations. And And a runner's favorite, a chip and Vegemite or Marmite sandwich. It is super important to have a variety of flavors of your favorite foods, and it must be highly palatable, because when you're fatigued and dehydrated, your perfect planned nutrition is of no use if you cannot consume it. And lastly, embrace imperfection. No one gets their diet right. Aim to make the best choices you can with what's available in front of you, rather than stressing about it and not eating enough. How do you know you're a trail runner? When you're sharing memes about pooping themselves. But jokes aside, Bill Rogers, a 4 times Boston Marathon and 4 times New York Marathon winner, illustrates the magnitude of the problem for endurance athletes, particularly long distance runners. This can come in varying forms, intensity and frequency, such as diarrhea, cramping in the gut, nausea, and gastric pain, and can ultimately lead to many athletes dropping out. UTMB just having been run this past weekend, a vast majority of the top pro athletes or gastric issues. So gastrointestinal distress is most likely to arise when a combination of factors come together: mechanical, nutritional, and physiological. So mechanical relates to repetitive high impact during running, positioning on the bike, especially in the aero positioning, and even the lateral position of swimming. Here, you can train yourself to be less sensitive to gastric distress. Nutritional, this can be associated with foods high in fiber, fat, protein, as well as high concentration carb drinks and gels, which is primarily our source of fuel. This is highly individualized, and a fair amount of trial and error is required to figure out what works best for you. And lastly, physiological, which relates to reduced blood flow to the intestine during exercise, a concept referred to as splanchnic hypoperfusion, and redirecting that blood flow to the working muscles. Arguably, the most popular item in an aid station is watermelon, but here's another good reason why. It contains a non-essential amino acid called citrulline, which helps regulate blood flow in the intestine. Another trick we've also learned is to consume a small bite of a bar right at the start of a training session or a race, commencing digestion, which in theory is retaining some of the blood flow. Seems to work for a lot of us. If there's one thing I've always stood by: start your day right. So generally, it's always been a bowl of porridge for me, but I've found smoothies to be more versatile, easier to consume when traveling to training or races, easier to digest, and also refreshing after a big training session. This particular ingredient list ticks a lot of boxes: plenty carbs and fiber, hits the mark with protein, iron, omega-3, magnesium, and other nutrients. And of course, this can be tweaked to include local seasonal fruit, or even add some peanut butter for a little extra fat and protein. I've experimented with a lot of different foods for my long training sessions, and here's one of the few homemade gels I really enjoyed training and competing with. Of course, fresh whole ingredients are fantastic, but they do come with plenty of downsides. Calorie for calorie and carbs for carbs, whole foods are not as dense and require more volume to carry as well as consume. But as I started competing more nationally and especially abroad, the logistics of sticking solely with whole foods became a pain. Traveling with a blender was just another heavy item to carry, and of course the stress of remembering to put the blade in the checked-in luggage as well. And certain countries, especially Australia and New Zealand, restrict bringing in fresh produce. So for example, needing to buy a whole bag of chia seeds just to use a couple of teaspoons becomes very wasteful. In theory, this is nice, but practicality will always win. Whilst you might now be inspired to eat better and head out to run your first ultra tomorrow, let me quickly read you the fine print. And in fact, Maeve touched on this already. Contrary to popular belief, it is not necessarily the training that makes you stronger, faster, and fitter. Those benefits come during recovery, when adaptation takes place. So improving your recovery will produce more performance benefits than any amount of increase in training intensity or volume on their own, and will also reduce your risk of sustaining an injury. So focus on your nutrition and other lifestyle measures. Whilst the engine adapts fast, bones and tendons take a lot longer, at least 3 months. So the goal of Athletes for Nature is to create one community of outdoor enthusiasts, irrespective of background, no barriers. Becoming a member is a subscription to a set of action steps, access to resources, including a range of recipes and events we put on. So for those of you in Auckland, you're invited to join our very first cooking class in collaboration with Cuckoo Eatery, which will include some sporting nutrition theory as well. You'll find all of this, our podcasts, and more on our website.
Amazing. Thank you, Ben. That was great. You've got so much going on. You're super busy. If I was in Auckland, I'd definitely be at your cooking class. We had a Dine with the Doc dinner. Ben presented as a part of a panel there. And the food at Cuckoo Eatery was just delicious. So if you're ever in Auckland, please go and visit. Now, everybody, we've got a whole lot of questions who've come in from the audience. We'll just spotlight everybody, make sure you're all in view. There we go. Thank you. Now, some of them will be related to one of you in particular, but you can all definitely pitch in and answer. My first question, and let's go quickly around the room. What's your daily eating like in a minute or so? Leila, let's start with you. What do you eat in a day?
All right. Oh gosh. I actually I'm one of those people who likes to graze throughout the day, so I eat a lot of small meals. But for breakfast, I usually actually train fasted. So as soon as my workout is done, I have my breakfast, which is probably one of my biggest meals in the day. And then it's usually porridge. I love porridge. And if it is not porridge, if I don't have time for porridge, and when I say porridge, I'm not just talking about oats, like kind of 3-4 pieces of fruits, different fruits, and flaxseed. So it's kind of a big bowl. And if I'm not having porridge, then it's usually bread and peanut butter. So keep it simple. And then I have usually a piece of fruit or two, a few hours later, then lunch. Yeah, it's I try to eat no oil, whole food, plant-based. So it's a lot of vegetables with pasta, brown pasta and stuff. And then, in the evening, later in the evening, I try to have something small. So usually something like a soup or with a piece of bread. So it's a bit something smaller, lighter in the evening. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds delicious. I'm getting hungry because I haven't had dinner yet. So, Maeve, how about you? What's a typical day of eating?
I got a chance to run through. I just said I'd say, what did I eat yesterday? I eat a lot as a strength athlete. I can't train fasted. It's the opposite for me. So let's say yesterday before I trained, I had oats. I could have lots of different breakfast smoothies. I love tofu scramble, all those kind of things. Yesterday I had oats because it's starting to get cold here, right? So I had porridge, flax seeds, chia seeds, agave nectar, soy milk. A very kind of warming breakfast. I trained. After training, I had vegan Greek yogurt, granola, blueberries, raspberries. And then for I call it my one pot of wonders. I don't have time to cook all the time. So I love to batch cook certain things like curries. So I made a lovely curry, and there's chickpeas and tempeh in it, and loads of vegetables and coconut milk and all of that with rice. So that was kind of our dinner early-ish in the day when Irla comes home from school. And then we'd have in Ireland what we called a supper. It's like an evening meal, slightly smaller. I tend to have my massive meal in the middle of the day. I think it's a bit of an Irish thing, if we can. And then there's supper in the evening. And supper was falafel in pita with avocados, rocket, and air-fried potatoes on the side.
That sounds delicious. That sounds exactly how I'd like to eat, but I'm not a strength training athlete, so I probably should stay away from all those higher calorie.
Well, not really. It's just the volume. I probably do eat a bit more, Rebecca, but as regards like the sources and the choices, it'd be good for anyone. It's just I eat a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Ben, how does a typical day, maybe not leading up to a race, just a typical day of eating for you?
Well, I think everyone knows what I have for breakfast now. That or porridge or soaked oats overnight. So more like so definitely oats. That's been my go-to since I've been little. Then I eat my main meal's lunch. Again, probably that Mediterranean influence. But because I'm hungry, I'm eating lunch 11:30. So not even a proper lunchtime. So yeah, I really do load up the eating at the sort of first half of the day. By evening, sometimes I don't even have dinners because I've really front loaded. Again, depends on the appetite. If I'm hungry, I have to eat. But pretty much like everyone else, every weekend, every Sunday, I've been soaking some form of lentils or chickpeas or black beans because I pre-cook for the meal for the week. So there's always potatoes or rice of some form, lots of vegetables. So meals that I can reheat through the week as well. Just I'm time poor. I take my food to, my lunch to work. So I've got to be prepped. Otherwise, sometimes it's not so great. A lot of travel for work. So that can be quite frustrating when you're trying to really eat well. So Mexican is super easy to eat out, super easy to make it vegan. I even asked for extra beans and no rice, don't have to put the cheese in. And nowadays there's vegan options in terms of, lots of vegetables or even a jackfruit sort of option. So yeah, try and make the best choices, but preference is what you do at home. So focus on that 80%. And if you're eating a few meals out, it's not the end of the world. It's a bigger picture. And just your comment on, if it's a week leading in, carb loading is a bit of a myth. Overeating the night before is only going to cause stomach issues. It's more important what you do in general. It's the big picture, how you eat all the time, and then not overdoing it the night before. And I think my very first Ironman I did 20 years ago, I followed that old school carb loading where for 3 days you restrict the carbs you have and uptake your fat and protein, and then for the second 3 days you really load up the carbs and you put on an extra 2 kgs, because that was the old school way of carb loading. I can't say that did any good. So just eat properly throughout, and that's the benefit. So
yeah, sounds great. Good advice. I'm sure there's a lot of people watching who get a lot out of that. Okay, let's get into some of the questions from our audience. There was a question about training fasted or unfasted. So we had a webinar with Dr. Neetu Bajikal recently talking about menopause, and she recommended for women, I guess, in that age group not to train fasted. I mean, Maeve and Leila have both commented on training with or without food. So Leila, maybe you want to start?
Sure. I think, when we talk about training fasted, we always think about, I am not having any breakfast or anything to eat before my workout. But it's not just about, what you eat just, the hour or 2 hours before leading to the workout. It's also, what did you have the previous day? So, and I think we are actually, sports nutrition is really interesting because it keeps changing and we are learning more. And the focus is now more on what you eat throughout the day rather than, just before and after your workout. And I think, you can train fasted as long as you had a good meal, the night before, and just not the night before, the day before, you had a good intake of all nutrients, really, carbohydrates, protein, all these nutrients we talk about. So then you can do it. And if you're just training because you want to stay fit and healthy, then that's fine. But obviously, if it was a competition, I would do things differently. And also, I think, people are different. Some people actually, if they train fasted, they feel sick. They are literally sick if they do that. And whereas some people, if they have something to eat before they work out in the morning, then they are going to be sick. So I think there is an individual approach to it as well. And again, it also depends on what kind of training you are doing, how long your training is, and what your goal is. So usually I would say, if you're just doing 45 minutes or even an hour and it's not really that intense, then I think, training fasted can be good and beneficial if your body takes it.
Yeah, great. And Maeve, do you feel the same? You need to eat?
Totally. I completely agree. People just think about this tiny window before they train and how it's going to affect their session. It's so much more global than that. It's what you do the day before. So if I have a bad session, it's probably not what I did that morning before the session. I probably didn't hydrate or fuel well enough the day beforehand. I might have eaten, now everyone's very different, but for me personally, if I eat too much wheat, silly stuff like wheat pasta as opposed to because I ran out of chickpea or lentil pasta, and that those kind of things can affect you. So there's very much individual differences that you need to check for. And like Dr. Leila was saying as well, some people can work out fasted and they feel fine. Some people feel weak or dizzy or sick. So you have to read your own body. Just quickly, for me, I'm one of those people, I would feel sick if I didn't eat. It's just a habit, I guess. And I suppose for if I was jumping around doing that kind of a workout and I had a breakfast, I'd probably feel sick from it. With strong training, it's not high intense or impacty, but you need massive reserves of energy to shift really heavy weights. So it's very static on the spot stuff. So I find I need the fuel, and then I'm not jumping around so I don't feel sick from it, if that makes sense. And just a final point on that, I always go back to the practicalities around something. if I skip breakfast, which I can see the benefits of for certain things, right? I can see for certain levels of fasting or whatever. If I skip breakfast, my son will skip breakfast because he does what I do. And I can't allow that. I can't allow him to go to school without carbs and his brains.
Yep.
So practically speaking, I have to walk the walk of what he should do too.
Yeah, great, good advice. And I think it's Dr. Walter Longo that talks about some of the longest lived people in the world all have breakfast. You know, it's breakfast helps people live well and longer, and they do better in tests at school. They've shown it in children. So yeah, it's great. Ben, there's a question here related to you. Let me see if I can find it. Do you recommend then a slightly lower fiber plant-based foods the day before a marathon, like, you know, not wanting to have those digestive issues?
And especially the morning. So for instance, my smoothie has flaxseed powder. I'll actually leave it out just because just that extra bit of fiber. It's fine if you don't have that tablespoon of flaxseed powder for one morning. Have the smoothie after. So yeah, I not overly conscious, but you know, if there's something more, sort of, you know, if I have rice, have white rice instead of brown rice, little tweaks like that, just to be a bit more conscious of it. Just to go back to the fasted training, I'm anti it, purely because we have a lot of athletes that are on board don't eat enough. So to then have that discussion of, because our sessions are not an hour and a half, no problem, drink a bit of water, go do the session. But for ultra endurance sessions, a typical long day is a 6 to 8 hour run. Can't do that fasted. So because there's more damage happening. So it is super important to be fueled because the recovery actually happens already with the fueling you've done during the session, not just waiting and then trying to make up for it. So I'm anti it because I find more athletes are actually under fueling. If they're fueling well and got good principles, then that conversation is easier to be had. For me, it's about awareness and ensuring that you actually, I don't work with numbers, but every new athlete, I give them some numbers and say, based on some metrics and your basal metabolic rate and then your intensity rates, I show them the figure of how many calories they got to eat and they almost fall off their chair. So it's sort of, we park that, you're aware you got to eat a lot. Now, just eat normally, just boost more of this, more of that, but be conscious that generally you're probably not eating enough. So yeah, I'm more of the camp to be more generalistic and really encourage people to eat more, which improves not just their performance, but their recovery, risk of injury, risk of illness, burnout, all that kind of stuff, because that comes from underfueling.
Yeah, no, really good advice. I think a lot of people would agree with you there. Now, the question come through for Leila and Maeve. I'm a dietitian and work with a lot of young males in custody in the jails here in Australia who are very keen on building muscle. Do you have any specific protein recommendations? So grams per kilogram per day. What are your go-to?
Well, I think that Dr. Leila can layer up on the science maybe of what I say. For general people, it's a gram per kilogram of body weight-ish. If you're in the more athletic, we'll say, demographic or someone that's definitely trying to build, they say to take up to around 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. So you know, if you just want to keep it simple, because I get this question from, it's nice that I get a lot of men as well, you know, that it's not just women. I seem to influence a lot of men as well that approach me about getting stronger and building more muscle. And it goes back to that expression, you got to eat big to get big, you know, so you can't expect to be just sipping away on protein powders and muscle mass things. Some people, you know, add that on if they're really trying to add size, but you just look at the basics. You just got to look at the basics, because unfortunately, this is the downfall of the fitness industry a little bit. There's this massive thing about how you look, right? So guys and girls, so they want to get strong, but they also want to have the 6-pack, and they know they have to eat, but they have to, you know, but they're here counting calories and restricting. So it's all muddled up. You know, and that's why I try to influence people to where the aesthetic can come after health and performance. And for these young guys, they're looking to get size, So if you're trying to do a cutting and bulking, it makes me, I can't handle those kind of words used and thrown around. The only people that should be cutting and bulking are competitive bodybuilders. The rest of us should try and eat in a linear, healthy fashion all the time. You know, again, I get asked, what do you eat on a training day versus a I eat the same every day, because I get improvements in a slower, more gradual, linear fashion, as opposed to cut, bulk, on, off, on track, off track, being good, being bad, this kind of a thing. So I would just encourage them to eat more all of the time. Don't cut and bulk and all this kind of things. There's no need. And watch the sources of food that you're eating and make good choices as regards to the protein sources that you're eating. So, you know, sometimes have we picked up a protein bar if you're cut for time, stuff like that, fine. And it goes back to what Ben was saying about the 80 and 20%. You can do 20% stuff like that, but in general, you're having big voluminous meals and you're including protein in every single meal. And what I try to do is go with the kind of kings and queens of the protein from the plant world, and then the kind of what some people call the secondary proteins. And I have both every day, they show up. So the kings and queens is like the tofu, tempeh, seitan side of things. And then if you go down a level, and then I have lots from this level every day as well, edamame beans, chickpeas, lentils, beans, nuts, seeds, nut butters. And in a big kind of muddle, you're trying to get them all in there. So watch the sources you're eating. Eat a voluminous amount of food if you're trying to get bigger, and lift for strength and hypertrophy. Don't just think of hypertrophy and the aesthetic and cutting. So, and be patient. People don't build the bodies they want in 6 months. It can take years and decades.
Yeah, good point. Leila, do you have anything to add to that?
I agree with everything that has been said. I mean, the guideline says 1.2 to 2 gram per kg body weight per day of protein. But as Ben was saying earlier, and I really like that, is that most athletes, and it doesn't matter whether they are vegan or non-vegan, actually the main problem is that they're not consuming enough calories. And I think by focusing too much on protein, they are forgetting that we are, our bodies, we are energy first system. So we need to create that energy to be able to do things, you know, to lift weights and whatever. So we need to make sure that we are consuming enough calories. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard that, you know, as long as you're increasing your calorie intake, you are going to increase your protein intake by default. And I think that is one of the issues, that people just focus too much on one single nutrient, which is protein. Having said that, if people want to, again, build the muscles, it is better to have that protein, you know, kind of throughout the day rather than in one big meal. So it doesn't matter if a meal offers, like, I don't know, 150 grams of protein, that's not going to really help much, because the body can only, you know, the threshold is 0.3 to 0.4 grams of protein per kg per meal. So it's better to have actually a bit of protein, like Maeve was saying, in every meal throughout the day, rather than having one big meal with lots of protein. So I would really focus on, are you getting enough calories? That should be the main priority. And then make sure that, you know, you include one source of protein, you know, throughout the day. And obviously we are talking about plant-based protein here. If it is animal-based protein, then, you know, they may actually not getting enough nutrients, essential micronutrients like vitamins and minerals, which can again affect, you know, ability to build muscle. So I think, you know, these are all things which one should be really mindful of. And that's also why an individualized approach is always necessary. But yeah, that is the rough guideline.
Yeah, and so a couple of questions that we have come in that are similar to that are protein timing. So if you're eating protein throughout the day with all your meals, I think that's quite a bit of a myth that you have to time it, have it really quickly after you've exercised to have a benefit. So yeah, I think that's probably the same sort of thing. Leila, do you agree, the protein timing?
Yes and no. Again, yes, the conventional thinking, we used to think that, you need to have something within the next like kind of 30 minutes or 2 hours after your training, but we are moving away from it. But I wouldn't move away from it completely, because again, it depends on the person. If I am training faster, then yes, by all means, I want to have something to eat, within that time window, because I need to replenish my glycogen stores, and also make sure that I get some protein, because I didn't have anything, before workout. And also, if you are trained, let's say you train at 9 a.m. and you had already a breakfast and you're going to have lunch, then that's fine. You don't need to, make sure that to have a shake straight after your workout. But if you train at 9 a.m. and you are going to have another training session at 1 p.m., then, maybe you want to eat something in between. So I think, it really depends on what kind of level of fitness you are doing. Are you just an amateur athlete, a hobby exerciser, or are you a professional athlete who's training 6-7 hours per day? Ben was talking about it, and I have done that myself. When I was training 6-7 hours, you need to eat more frequently. So that, varies. But for general population who are just, doing some exercise 2 or 3 times a week, maybe, or even if they're just doing it once a day and it is an hour, no, the 2-hour window is not that important.
Okay, great. Ben, there's a question for you that you might be able to answer. Some good go-to meals and snacks when you've run a long distance, but you've lost your appetite. So perhaps that level of endurance can make people, not want to eat.
Not quite sure if the question's referring to during the event or post.
I think it's post.
That appetite will come back.
After.
It'll come back. Sometimes, you're quite depleted and you might not feel hungry, but honestly, as soon as you smell something, then that hunger hits you. During the event, that does happen. Long sessions, and usually, like I said, there's factors like dehydration will suppress your appetite, and so will altitude effects, and before you know it, you're in trouble because you're really hitting that wall. So it's mixing things up, and usually it's sometimes overconsumption of the same thing, because you're consuming carbs, but it's a lot of sweetness. So savory is a good break. That's why we like these. Here we call it Vegemite, but in other parts of Marmite, Marmite on bread and chips, salt chips, sandwich, boom, savory, and it's kind of resetting. At night, a favorite of ours is soup. They do offer this in aid stations. I know some like miso soup, nutritious, but it's just getting nutrients back in you, but it's savory. So it's kind of resetting the body. But it's awareness, and sometimes maybe you're just drinking too much heavy electrolyte carbohydrates. Go to switch to plain water for a bit, and then eat foods and rebalance. Post, it's simple. If you're not hungry, let your body reset and so on. Rehydrate a little bit. That hunger will hit you hard, because if you haven't consumed, you need to. There's just one comment I want to make, as Maeve kind of touched on this, the aesthetics thing. Pro cycling has really transformed in the last few years. Pro cycling is an interesting sport to watch because there's a lot of money, and they really try to push the boundaries in terms of marginal gains, and they really get some high-performing nutritionists as well. For decades, it's always been about big events like Tour de France. It's about leaning up, right? Losing some weight because your weight to power ratio is better on the big climbs and so on. So you want to have less weight. Runners the same, So we're not eating enough because we're trying to lose weight. But in the last 2 years, especially, where they're now transformed and trying to push beyond the extremes, 120 grams, which I would never recommend doing because you will literally shit yourself. But in cycling, they're training to do that. But that they're focusing more on eating. They're not coming in with those lost 2-3 kgs. They're focusing on the training. They're focusing on the power, on the energy, and the results and what's happening in cycling is phenomenal. How these guys are breaking away and riding solo for 100 k's, and a lot of that's to the nutrition. So there's a lot of eating disorders in sports, a lot more so, higher percentages. I think I've seen some research in more the aesthetic sports like professional ballet and bodybuilding, but eating disorders are prevalent because of that whole, I've got to look like an athlete. Whereas look at a lot of high performing athletes now, professionals, and Christian Blumenfeld, someone who comes to mind, previous Olympic champion, Ironman world champion. Like, he's an athlete that's crossed it all. He does not look like a typical lean and fast. He looks chubby. He looks overweight, and he beats everyone. The focus is on the nutrition. Don't focus so much on the aesthetics, for sure.
Yeah, that's great. Excellent advice. We're going to have to wrap it up. There were a few more questions, but I don't think we're going to get time. Yeah, I just want to say that it's fantastic that, you'll focus on whole food, plant-based nutrition, and you're inspiring and leading by example, all of you, which is great. I think that, people think that on a plant-based diet, you can't get enough nutrition or fiber or build muscle or whatever, but you're all obviously doing it, and yeah, leading by example, which is amazing. So thank you very much again. We're extremely grateful for you giving up your time today to share all your insights and your knowledge. So thank you again. Now, I just got a few more announcements for everyone. Over the coming days, you'll receive an email to an evaluation survey. So this is different to Leila's, and a link to this webinar recording. So to complete the evaluation, you can scan the QR code on your screen, and there'll be a link in the chat box. So this basically just helps us with any feedback that we might be able to develop future webinars. So our good friends at Plant-Based Health Professionals UK are holding 2 nutrition and lifestyle medicine conferences. They're one-day events, and these are coming up soon. They're open to anyone interested in learning more about plant-based nutrition and lifestyle changes for optimal health and well-being, not just health professionals. So if you're in the UK, the first event will be held in person on Monday, 6th of September in London. And the second will be a live virtual event. I've registered for it. I'm looking forward to it on Saturday, the 9th of November. But both events will be CME or CPD accredited, depending on what sort of points you're after. And whether you're a health professional, policy maker, or simply passionate about optimizing your health through better eating patterns and habits, there's something for everyone. The virtual event on the 9th of November covers hot topics, including healthy aging, physical activity in midlife and beyond, lifestyle medicine in practice, and the keynote speaker will be Dr. Michael Greger. Dr. Neetu Bajika will also be presenting at this virtual event. And the event will be recorded and available to view on demand for those of us who are on a different side of the planet. So early bird pricing for the online event is still available. So head to the link in the chat box. You can find out more about it. So Doctors for Nutrition is funded by small grants and donations by kind people like yourselves. So another way you can support us is to continue to provide webinars like this one is through one-off or monthly donation. So please click on the link in the chat box. It doesn't have to be much, just whatever you can afford. Even the cost of your beetroot latte, or I should have put maybe a beetroot smoothie there. That might have been a bit more relevant. Anything would be a great help to enable us to keep doing what we do best. So don't knock it until you try it. The beetroot latte is delicious. And finally, to view fact sheets on a range of health topics and download all our resources, head to our website, doctorsfornutrition.org. Thank you again for joining us tonight or today, and we wish you all good health. Thanks, everyone.